Hi there, Vibe Gardeners. Welcome to another episode of Vibe Gardening Inform Edition, where we are going to talk about a very interesting topic that I learned from social media called No Mow May, where we don't mow our lawn for whole entire May. And with that said, we're going to talk about the myth and truth about this topic. So let's go. All right, so let's go into a little bit about what is No Mow May. The premise of No Mow May is that you will not be mowing your lawn in the whole entire month of May. And the idea behind that is that a lot of people claim that you're basically going to be feeding your pollinators during this time and giving them the nutrition and energy they need to get prepared for the entire growing season coming up. Basically, essentially making the wildlife in your local suburban area a little more vibrant. And it's been an ongoing topic for at least a decade of me kind of hearing about it on social media. So I'm going to go into a little bit about what are the myths of this whole entire thing, and what are some of the truth about it, and what can potentially be a better way of handling it, and how I worked with it in the past, and what I was able to make it work for me. So here we go. So before we go into this, let's talk a little bit about kind of what is actually going on here in a normal suburb like mine. I have basically a normal European grass lawn like most Americans do. But the reality here is that this grass is not native to this environment here. In that it's more European grass, it's not kind of like the bluegrass that is more native to North America, and also comes with dandelion, which I believe is also invasive and not really native here, though it could be. Not 100% sure. But what it really does here is that this um, crop here, if you will, this grass and dandelion, and I even have some creeping charlie, if you see some purple flowers hanging around in my yard. These are not exactly feeding the local pollinators very well, in that it is actually geared towards more of the honeybee and the bumblebee for the early season fuel, like a stopgap for them to get that energy going so that they can essentially go and start getting ready for the season, especially for things like bumblebee with their in-ground nest that their queens have. So they basically is essentially giving them the energy to get going so that their colony can get going in the coming season. Now, granted, the nutritional profile is not the most complete, but it is that stopgap they need to get their entire season launched in the right direction. So you may wonder, so if it's really helping honeybees, which is kind of the truth here, now what actually helps with the local pollinators? Local pollinators really need more kind of like this weed that we call it nowadays, not so much this lawn that we are mowing. So what you really need is you need something kind of like a wild strip. And I will show more in a little bit about what mine looks like, but essentially what that is you're basically preserving the local, basically what we call weeds in North America. And we let that thing grow wild. And what we do is we let that go all season. And that's going to give the local critters really a chance to basically eat what they want to eat in this time, and basically let the pollinators really grow the way they want to grow. So as promised, this is my wild strip back here. This is where I basically have not mowed for at least 5 years or more now, probably closer to 10 years. And as you can see, it's definitely grown wild. It's got a lot of plants really like the dried stem from last year. And I don't actually honestly know what the name of these plants are. I do trim it back to make sure that I'm chopping off things so that I can still have the rest of my yard to work with. And the beauty of this is that you're essentially you're leaving the environment the way that the local pollinators like it, but yet at the same time, you're not taking up so much space that you're losing, well, the rest of my lawn to things I need to do, like host parties or grow my garden. So this right here accounts for maybe 5% to 10% of my yard. And this is actually one of the best ways to really actually promote the local pollinators to grow. And another way that if you don't want to keep a strip like this, another way of really helping the local pollinators is really to do something called basically limited mowing, which is you want to get a 2 to 3 week gap between mowing. And what that does, it gives your lawn a chance to really have flowers pollinate, come up, and then the pollinator feed on it. But this is the ideal situation of having a 5 to 10% of your property be a wild strip, where you just don't do any kind of maintenance at all. And then it become essentially kind of like a untouched woods. And that really helps all the population here grow. Now, I understand that this strip right here will essentially a lot of times create seeds of weeds that you don't want in your yard. And that's where for example, with thistle, I do not want to have any of those thorny, prickly weeds in my yard. So what I end up doing is I go on the perimeter and basically I pluck them out and get rid of them manually. I know it's a little more work, but what that does is that it does leave this whole entire area for the local pollinators to be able to feed and let the local wildlife still have a little bit of their own land to work with. So another big advantage of Mow May is that it really creates dandelions that, for me, become sort of a trap crop for bunnies. Bunnies really like to go and eat my green herbs stuff, especially cilantro, parsley, and any of those things. But the reality here is that by having dandelions grow, especially with dandelion flower this early, it creates a lot of distractions from the bunnies, in that they really feel almost kind of like a dessert or a delicacy, kind of like a treat for them, because the dandelion is still very tender at that point, and there's a lot of nectar in the flower. And when they chew on that, it's really soft, juicy, and kind of sweet. So that's why bunnies, every year I've noticed that bunnies, they really, during that period, they prefer to eat dandelion flowers, and all my cilantro and parsley does not get attacked by the bunnies. But the moment majority of these yellow flowers, once the dandelion go to seed and having these little puffy balls, as you guys are well aware of, the bunny starts attacking my cilantro and parsley, and that's where the fencing problem from last year came about. So but the beauty of that is that when this period comes along, it gives you time to essentially build your defense for your garden to try to make it a little bit more bunny proof, because they are really essentially herbivores of opportunity. So if you give them dandelion flowers, for instance, that's easily accessible, they will not go for any of your other crops. So always think about dandelion as kind of strategic weaponry, if you will, when it comes to preventing bunnies from overtaking your tender and new growth. All right, guys, so that's it for this episode. I hope that gives you guys a good idea of what is Mow May and what actually is true about it, and what are actual myths about what Mow May does for you, and what are alternatives for you that can really actually achieve your goal, depending on what they are, because Mow May does achieve the ability of getting that early season feed for your bumblebees and honeybees going, which frankly, from if my knowledge is correct, I think they're not quite local. If they are, it's really the European type honeybee that we're helping here. But if you really want to help out the local pollinators, what you really should be doing is really creating a wild strip like I have in my yard, or do limited mowing to give them a chance to get the flower they need to promote the local pollinator population. So I hope that gave you guys a good idea of what's going on here. So hopefully you will be attracting the right type of pollinators that you want. So guys, keep gardening and keep vibing. Let's go.